afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Sports Box for the only opinion that matters. It's right here. I am Mike Coletta, aka Hammonton Mike, bringing you my NHL special for the playoffs. We're going to talk about the Eastern Conference. Joining me today is a newcomer to the Sports Box and an NHL analyst that we're going to bring on the show from now on, Brian Attard. Brian?
Pleasure to be here.
Hey, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
As you can tell, we're all NHL'd out. I am a Flyers fan. Brian is a Rangers fan. That's okay, we won't hold that against him. But anyway, we're going to talk about the Eastern Conference quickly, and you see up front, we're going to give you the matchup so you know what we're talking about. Brian, the first matchup you probably know a lot about, the Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pittsburgh, they've won this series 3 out of the last 4, or 3 out of the 4 games they've won. Pittsburgh's played well in the last 10. They've been the hottest team in the NHL right now. They're 8-2-0 in their last 10. The Rangers 6-3-1. Not a bad record for the Rangers. They are starting to come on a little bit.
I think towards the end of the year, I mean, they had a bit of a lull in like the December, early January that they kind of found their way out of. Probably let a couple points off the table there, but they did start to play a little better towards the end of the year. Predominantly, the power play really came on more so in February and March than it was earlier in the year. It was actually a bit of a sore point for them at that point, but they did finish well. Probably finished better than they wanted to because of the matchup that they got. They probably would have preferred to drop a spot, truth be told. But
absolutely,
they've got a tough matchup here with Pittsburgh.
And it's funny with this matchup, Pittsburgh's played this well without Eugene Malkin in the lineup with the injury he has. He's supposedly going to be thinking about skating this week. I don't know how good he's going to be going in this series. Obviously, they have Sidney Crosby, Letang, you know, and the Rangers with Stahl, both Stahls on the team. Boyle, Kreider. I mean, you got a lot of firepower on both ends.
I think the difference between the two teams, for the Rangers to really extend this series to get it to a deeper series, which I think is in their favor if it goes longer, would be Henrik Lundqvist. I think that goes without saying.
Absolutely.
He's been the steadying force for a decade. Probably the main reason why they're ever as far as they are. Is him.
Yep.
The injury to Ryan McDonough is going to be huge in this series.
Huge.
Pittsburgh
I was just going to bring that up, too.
Pittsburgh's a very, very fast team. They recently acquired Carl Hagelin, the former Ranger, who scored the overtime goal against them last year to beat them. He's made a big difference. He's elevated Crosby's game, elevated Letang's game, as well as the coaching change. It's a tough matchup for the Rangers.
And they talk about McDonough that, you know, it's a big loss for him. It is. From what I hear, he broke his hand pretty badly. He's thinking about skating this week. I don't know how he's going to have any kind of hands with the broken hand. But getting back to what you said about Lundqvist, I agree 100%. And that's with us being Rangers and Flyers. I don't know how much we're going to agree here. But the Lundqvist and Fleury matchup. Fleury's been out for about 2 weeks now with a concussion. I hear some rumors that he's going to try to practice again, but he's not cleared 100% yet. Murray, their backup, solid goaltender, Calder Cup winner, Rookie of the Year, more than likely. He's a little banged up, and you know the third stringer they got in there. I mean, he's only played 2 NHL games. So again, it gets back to Pittsburgh, firepower extraordinaire. Do they have the goaltending? And I don't know if they do.
You know, the Rangers had 5 20-goal scorers this year. I think if, you know, you said that before the beginning of the year, and Rick Nash not being one of them, you say, how are they going to pull that off? They had really big years from Derek Stepan, Derek Brassard. Kreider turned it on late. I think the difference in this series is it's going to have to be on Lundqvist to really will the way.
And what a shock.
Shocking, right?
Shocking.
I mean, the Rangers being down their overall best defenseman is going to bring other defensemen who probably shouldn't be matched up. I mean, I think today I read that they're going to put Stahl and Girardi against Crosby's line. That's a disaster waiting to happen, let me tell you that.
Tough,
it's going to all be on Henrik. And the Rangers have to stay out of the box.
Yeah, I agree.
Their penalty kill has not been good. Again, all that firepower Pittsburgh has, you don't want to give them the man advantage with that speed. Like it is a very, very tough draw for them. They would have been better off, frankly, had they lost and gone to the other bracket, but that is what it is.
It is what it is, and now they move on to play Pittsburgh. Now, in a prediction-wise, I'm a big proponent of goaltending. People know me as a goaltender. I think goaltending wins you series. You have goalies that'll get you on their back and carry you through a series, and I think these 2 goalies are kind of equal. They can do that, but Fleury, number 1, has never proven that deep into the playoffs, and number 2 is I don't know if he's healthy. And you know, I'm gonna cover this up and say I think the Rangers win this series in 7. Even though I think Pittsburgh has a ton of firepower, I think the Rangers could sneak Game 1, and if they could sneak Game 1, who knows what can happen. This is going to be a bang-up, rough and tumble series. I think the Rangers can get it done in 7.
I think the loss of McDonough is going to be huge for them. I agree. I think depending how Pittsburgh's goaltending plays out, that's going to require Pittsburgh to maybe be a little more run and gun than they would like to be. The longer the series goes, it definitely favors the Rangers because again, McDonough gets back. You get that doubt in Pittsburgh's head, who's lost this team both the past 2 seasons. Listen, I'd love to be wrong. I hate to say it. I'm going to take Pittsburgh in 5. Rangers have just been too up and down this year, and it's going to all be on Henrik's shoulders and. I think it's just a lot to ask.
Well, yeah, we will see. Like I said, we're on 2 different entities over there.
So, I hope to be wrong, though. Yeah. Very happily wrong.
The next matchup we're going to is something in this area that everybody's looking forward to is the Washington Capitals against the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers and Capitals have split this series. In the last 10, Washington's been 4-3-3. You know, not struggling, but not playing as crisp as they once were, which I think is the last week and a half, 2 weeks of the season after they clinched the President's Cup, they were in kind of cruise control. The Flyers 6-3-1, very hot team going into the playoffs. But I kind of think even though in the second half of the year they've played solid and they've worked so hard to get into the playoffs. I don't know if this team is exhausted, if they've gone through a lot. Even to this weekend, unfortunately, the death of their owner Ed Slender, who's been the owner for 49 years, they could get a little momentum out of that. I just don't know, Brian. I mean, I know the stats say that the President's Cup team, only one of them in the last maybe 15 years has gone on to win the Cup, and that was Chicago. I just see Washington as a lot of firepower for the Flyers to handle right now.
That's the deepest offensive team in the league.
Yep.
And they just seem to find players. I mean, to me, Evgeny Kuznetsov has been just a difference maker for that team. To come to be this really his rookie season, just really playing well this year. It's a top 5 penalty kill, a top 5 power play.
Yep.
They're deep at every position. They've earned that spot where they are atop the league. I think it's a really bad matchup for the Flyers. I say that because Gostisbehere has been fantastic. No way to discount that whatsoever. Their defense is not very strong. I think in the last little bit here that they've been so hot, especially with Neuwirth going down, Steve Mason has really willed that team to success, and I think he's really masked a lot of their defensive deficiencies. I think it's going to be really hard. Even if you get a pairing that works and you throw them on the Ovechkin line, 50 goals this year, your second, your third line, the depth is really there. And you're a goaltender, so you know this. I'm a big believer. If you have 2 goalies, you have no goalies. And I think at the first sign of some trouble, if they come back from Philly, if Washington's up 0-2 or 2-0 in the series, coming back to Game 3, if I'm Hackstall, I'm thinking about putting Neuwirth in there. And it reminds me a lot, and you'll remember this, the year that the Flyers played Montreal, where Montreal had Carey Price and Yaroslav Halak, and they kind of kept going back and forth, and it blew up in their face.
But I'm a big proponent of saying you got to go with a goaltender, you got to stay with a goaltender. You can't flip-flop goalies, because a goalie needs to get in a rhythm, especially in the playoff. It's a whole different atmosphere. With the Capitals, just to know what the Flyers are heading into, the Capitals have scored the most goals in the league. They've allowed the least goals in the league. The power play, like Brian said, is number 5 in the league. The number kill is 5 in the league. The Flyers, on the other hand, on the killing penalties, are number 22 in the league, and they're number 6 on the power play itself. You know, you're talking about Justin Williams, you're talking about Ovechkin, you're talking about Oshie, you're talking about Backstrom. I know people talk about Ovechkin that he doesn't come through in the clutch and all that, and that is that. But I just think he really doesn't have to. This team is so loaded. I mean, with Oshie and Justin Williams, these guys are going to make other guys play better on that Capitals team. Not the Flyers, you know, with Simmons scoring 31 this year. You got Giroux doing well, and like you said, Gostisbehere, 17 goals in a year. He's had a phenomenal year. But you're also, a lot of teams are also planning for Gostisbehere now, which is going to be a big adjustment to see if he can adjust, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just think that the biggest struggle they're going to have, I mean, I think the Flyers will be able to score on this team, especially, I mean, they're going to need their big guns to really play well. I know Voracek hasn't really played overly well since he came back from the injury. Some people think he's been somewhat of a detriment. I never believe good players are a detriment. It's just really going to be hard for them to just keep up with this team. I think that, again,
a lot of speed.
Shut down Ovechkin if you can, and you have depth.
But you shut down him, you got Oshie, and you got some other guys coming out of the chute. That again, the last 2 weeks you saw the Capitals. They've a little bit been in cruise control because of the President's Cup. But again, it goes down. I think the goaltending again. Holtby against Mason. Mason still got to prove something in the playoffs. Holtby's been there before, done that. You don't want to say he's a wily veteran, still a young guy. I have the Capitals winning in 6. A lot of guys that I've talked to have them winning in 5, but I think the Flyers can get a couple out of this team, and I think unfortunately the Capitals win in 6.
I like him in 5 myself. I think just the way the series breaks down, again, I do think there's going to be a bit of an emotional lift, you know, trying to win one for Ed Snyder. Yeah. He was a giant in the hockey world. It's very sad to see him go there. But I just think the Capitals are too loaded. I think that they're very motivated to, you know, break that stigma that they have. that they can't get very far in the playoffs. This is the best team they've had. I think it's their good shot.
Definitely going to be tough for the Flyers. The next series we have is the Florida Panthers versus the New York Islanders. Well, excuse me, the Brooklyn Islanders. I always keep saying New York. I'm so used to saying Brooklyn Islanders, just doesn't even sound right. But anyway, Florida taking 2 out of 4 in this series. In their last 10, Florida's 7-3-0. The Islanders are 6-3-1. So it's a pretty balanced series. It's funny because Florida, this is their second time in since 1999. They're not a playoff-ready team. They're not an experienced playoff team, but they're loaded with a lot of veterans on this team. And they got a young talent, too. They got Jaromir Jagr, the veteran, the never-aging veteran, who's been 44 years old, having a great year again. You got Barkov, you got Huberdeau. I mean, you got a lot of guys in there, especially and anchored by Luongo and net. I mean, I think Florida could really do some damage in this series.
They've been drafting high for many years, and I think that unlike Edmonton, as it turns out, they've drafted very, very well. Barkov is just a revelation this year for that team. Yeah. I mean, I think they've come somewhat out of nowhere, and I think a lot of that could be acquiring Luongo and getting that stability in net, as we know it's so important.
Because they've shuffled around for years.
Absolutely. Ekblad was the #1 pick in the draft a couple years ago, drafted in Philadelphia at that draft there. They're a really good team. A lot was said about who would try to creatively lose some games and end up in that spot for Florida versus a Washington or Pittsburgh. I don't know. Pick your poison. I mean, that's a deep team. Again, they may not have a lot of playoff experience, but they have some leaders that do. And I think that they can definitely lead the way.
And you look at the Islanders, Anders Lee injury with the broken leg. I mean, that's going to hurt them as well. He's had a phenomenal year. But Tavares, the captain, 33 goals. What can you say about him? He steps up and does it all. You got Boychuk, you got Nelson on the team with 26 goals. You got Nielsen with 20 goals. I mean, this Islanders team is not to be taken lightly. They're not a team that's just going to walk into the playoffs and at one point they were #2 in the division and really rolling up to #1. But they've had some struggles. They struggled a little bit. Luongo Halak. I mean, Halak. What can you say about it? He's a good goaltender. He's had a solid year. Now, obviously up for the Vezina and all, but I just think, Florida can take this series in 6. I just don't think the Islanders have that much compared to a young, like you said, young defensive team as Florida. They've drafted young for years, and it's starting to pay off for them a little bit.
I think they're going to miss Halak in the series. I don't know if he's going to be able to make it back before the series is done. I think that's a big advantage for Florida in goal.
Oh, yeah. I think I did hear that he might play that.
The Islanders they have some offensive depth. I mean, they were able to get a couple free agent acquisitions on the blue line that have helped them quite a bit. They're coached well. I agree with you. I like the Panthers myself. I actually like them in 6 as well. Again, I just think that Florida doesn't really know that they shouldn't be there.
Florida probably doesn't deserve an ice hockey team, but you know what? You know what? They're a talented team.
They are very talented team, and I think you'll see that as they go through the series here. I do like Florida.
And speaking of Florida teams, we're going to the last matchup in the Eastern Conference. We're going to Tampa Bay and Detroit. Now, this series, looking at it from the outside, not looking really deep into it, you look at Detroit scrambling to get back into a series. I mean, they had to have some things happen in the last couple weeks of the year. Some injuries, things like that. Not the same old Detroit team we're used to seeing, but 25 straight years they've been in the playoffs now. I mean, that's an accomplishment in itself.
Crazy.
They split the series 2 apiece. Both teams actually 5-5 in their last 10, so they're both on the same wavelength. But Tampa Bay, I mean, injury bug. I mean, you're talking about Steven Stamkos out with the blood clot injuries. Strelman's had a great year, fractured leg. He's not going to be playing in the series. You're talking about 2 guys that anchor this Lightning team that really get them rolling. I mean, not digging deep into it yet, but I don't see how Tampa Bay can get this series done.
I think it's going to go a long series because both teams had issues. There's a lot of talking to Detroit of Pavel Datsyuk leaving after the season.
He is retiring. Yeah.
But you're right. Tampa's just been between Anton Stralman, Stamkos. You take Stamkos off any team, and it is such a huge loss.
Yep.
It's a veteran team in that they went to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. The goaltending, Ben Bishop, I think, is an underrated goalie. I think you don't really hear him in the conversations of top goalies in the league, but I can tell you, Rangers played in the playoffs last year. He's very, very good. There are a lot of injuries, but I think it kind of works both ways in this series. I think I don't know how long the winter's going to go, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see if Tampa can get the most out of that triplets line to overcome the loss of Stamkos, and defensively, if they can overcome losing Stralman.
Like you said, Datsyuk going to retire at the end of the year. They got Mike Green back on defense from Washington, but they got Dylan Larkin, Zetterberg. These are the guys you've heard for a bunch of years for Detroit. I think Detroit's issue the next couple of years is going to be their aging team. I mean, they're going to have to really either either regroup and just start loading up again, or they just got to rebuild. But when it comes down to, like you said, Ben Bishop, I think he's a solid goaltender. I just don't see him carrying his team back there. Even with Tyler Johnson, Victor Hedman, Kucherov, you got a lot. You got some guys back there that had good years, 30 goal scorers. But again, the loss of Stamkos, I think, is really going to bite the Tampa Bay in the ass. I have Detroit winning this series in 6. As unbelievable as that sounds, because Detroit, like I said, backed into the playoffs. I think Razik's having a great year, 2.33 goals against average. He's up for the Vezina this year. Talk about goalies again, taking teams on their back. I think he's the kind of goalie that can take this older Detroit team and win this series.
I think he can. I think it's going to come down to a 7th game. I see, because of the injuries, they're very, very close. I'm going to give it to Tampa in 7 just because they're at home. Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of difference between the two teams right now, but I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. Again, they're a Cup finalists from last year, to find a way to get past this Detroit team by the skin of their teeth in the 7th game.
Well, we will see what happens. Well, that's all the time we have for the Sports Box for the Eastern Conference Playoffs. Make sure you check back for the Western Conference. We're going to go over that as well. Remember, the Sports Box, the only opinion that matters. It's right here. Take care, folks. I'll see you.
Don't forget to subscribe.